The Merchant of Venice. In Venice, there lived a wealthy Jew named Shylock. He had become rich by lending money at great interest to Christian merchants. Many men thought Shylock was cruel and hated him for it, especially Antonio, a young merchant. Shylock hated Antonio too, because Antonio lent his own money to people in trouble and did not charge them any interest. Whenever the two men met, Antonio attacked Shylock because of his cruelty. Shylock pretended to listen patiently, waiting for his chance to take revenge on this good man. Antonio was kind and greatly loved by everyone who knew him. His closest friend was Bassanio, a noble Venetian. Bassanio had spent almost all his wealth by living too well, like many young men of noble rank but little means. Whenever Bassanio needed money, Antonio gave it to him. One day, Bassanio came to see Antonio. "I wish to marry a rich young lady whom I love very much," he told his friend. "I knew her father well, and I often used to visit his house. He's dead now, and he has left all the wealth for her. I think she loves me too. I often saw it in her eyes, but I do not have enough money to dress well when I ask for her hand in marriage. Can you lend me 3,000 ducats, dear friend?" "I have no money to give you," Antonio explained, "but I am expecting some ships to arrive soon, full of goods to sell. I shall borrow the money from Shylock." They went together to ask Shylock to lend them the money at the interest he demanded. The Jew did not reply immediately. "This is my chance for revenge," he was thinking. "Antonio hates the Jewish people. He lends money without asking for interest, and he complains about me to the other merchants. He does not think about how hard I work to earn the interest." "Shylock, do you hear?" Antonio, impatient, shouted at last. "Will you lend me money? Whenever I meet you, you complain me about and my money lending." "Yes, whenever I meet you, you complain about me and my money lending," Shylock again replied. "I have been very patient, but you have kicked me like a dog. Now you come to me and ask me to lend you money? Does a dog have any money to lend?" "I shall do the same when I meet you next time," Antonio said. "If you lend me this money, do not lend it to me as a friend, but as an enemy." "Look how angry you are," Shylock said. "I want to be your friend. I shall forget the cruel way in which you have treated me. I shall lend you the money, but I shall take no interest for it." Antonio was surprised by this kind offer. Then, as they prepared to visit a lawyer and sign the contract, Shylock suggested that Antonio agree to another condition, but only in sport. "If you do not pay back this money by the day I ask," Shylock said, "then you shall give me a pound of flesh from the part of your body that I choose." "I shall sign this contract," Antonio said. "Now I see that there is such a thing as a kind Jew." Bassanio begged his friend not to do as Shylock asked. "Do not worry, dear friend," Antonio told him. "My ships will come in the day before I have to pay this money back." "Why do you not trust me?" Shylock said to Bassanio. "Tell me this, if Antonio breaks this contract, what would I gain from making him pay? A pound of flesh taken from a man is worth less than a piece of meat. If you want to accept my offer, then take it. If not, goodbye." So against the advice of Bassanio, Antonio signed the contract. The young woman who Bassanio wanted to marry lived near Venice, in a place called Belmont. Her name was Portia. Bassanio, with Antonio's borrowed money, set out for Belmont with many servants and friends, among them a gentleman attendant called Gratiano. "I am not rich," Bassanio told Portia, "but I am a man of noble birth." "I am rich enough not to want a rich husband," Portia replied, "and I admire you because you are a good man. I still have much to learn, but I should be happy to do as you wish. I should like to marry you. Take this ring. Now this house, these servants, and I belong to you, my lord." Bassanio was full of joy at her words and astonished that this graceful, intelligent young woman had accepted a poor man. He told her that he loved her and thanked her many times. Gratiano was happy too, because his dear friend was to be married. He asked for permission to marry at the same time. "With all my heart, Gratiano," Bassanio said, "if you can find a wife." "I have found one already," Gratiano replied. "I love Lady Portia's beautiful servant, Nerissa. She has promised to be my wife when her mistress marries you." "Is this true, Nerissa?" Portia asked. "If you agree, my lady," Nerissa replied. "I do," Portia said. "Then our wedding feast shall be your feast too," Bassanio said, smiling with joy. But his joy was sadly ended by the arrival of a servant with a letter from Antonio. When Bassanio read it, he became so pale that Portia thought a dear friend had died. "Oh, sweet Portia," he said unhappily, "these are the saddest words I've ever read. When I first told you of my love, I did not tell you that I owed money to my friend Antonio, or that he had borrowed from a money-lender. He cannot pay the money back, and Shylock wants his pound of flesh." "Read me this letter," Portia said. "Dear Bassanio," he read, "my ships are all lost, and I cannot pay the money back to Shylock. I cannot live with this shame. I should like to see you at my death. Antonio." "Oh, my dear love," Portia said, "go to your friend. I shall give you the money he needs. I shall marry you before you leave, so that my money is truly yours." The marriage took place immediately, and at the same time Gratiano married Nerissa. Bassanio and Gratiano then set out for Venice. They found Antonio already in prison. Shylock would not accept the money from Bassanio because the payment was late. He wanted his pound of Antonio's flesh. In Belmont, Portia tried to think of a way to help Bassanio. Although during the wedding ceremony she had promised to obey her husband, she decided to go to Venice immediately and speak in court in defense of Antonio. A member of her family was a lawyer, and Portia asked him to advise her. The lawyer told her that he would send her some clothes so she could disguise herself as a man. Portia did as he suggested, with Nerissa disguised as her clerk. She left for Venice and arrived on the day of Antonio's trial. When Portia entered the high court, she presented a letter from the lawyer of the Duke of Venice. In it, the lawyer said that he was ill and had sent a young man called Balthasar to speak from him in court. Portia looked around her. She recognized the cruel Shylock, and she saw Bassanio, but he did not recognize her in her disguise. The trial began. The importance of the job she had to do gave Portia courage. "You, sir," she began, turning to Shylock, "do have the right under Venetian law to the payment you agreed with Antonio, a pound of flesh. But I beg you to show mercy. He has the money to pay you." "Yes," Bassanio shouted, "I can pay you the 3,000 ducats and more if you ask for it." Shylock refused. Bassanio begged Portia to change the law a little. "Once laws are made, they cannot be broken," she told him seriously. Shylock was full of joy when he heard her words. "Oh, wise young judge," he said, "how much I admire you. You are wiser than your young face made me believe." "Let me see the contract," Portia said. When she had read it carefully, Portia said once more that Shylock could have his pound of flesh. It was to be cut from near Antonio's heart, as the contract said. "But first," she said to Shylock, "I must ask you again to show mercy." Again the cruel Shylock refused, and Portia told Antonio to prepare himself to die. She asked him if he had any last words. "No," he replied, "I'm ready." As Shylock was preparing his long knife, Antonio turned towards Bassanio. "Give me your hand, Bassanio," he said. "Goodbye. Do not be sad because I've died for you. Remember me to your wife and tell her how much I loved you." "Antonio," Bassanio said, I am married to a wife who is as dear to me as life itself, but I would give up my wife and my own life to this evil Jew to save you." When Portia heard this, she said, "Your wife would not thank you if she heard this offer." Then Gratiano, who loved to copy what his lord did, said, "I have a wife I love too, but I wish she were in heaven if it meant she had the power to change this cruel Jew." Nerissa, who was standing beside Portia, said, "It is well you said that behind your wife's back, or there would be trouble in your house." "We are wasting time," Shylock called out. "Let us continue with the punishment." The whole court was full of sorrow for Antonio. "Are the scales ready to weigh the flesh?" Portia asked. "Shylock, you must have a doctor here so that Antonio does not die from loss of blood." "The contract says nothing about a doctor," he replied. "You can show mercy," Portia said. "Come, Antonio," Shylock shouted, taking his knife. "Prepare yourself." "Wait, Jew," Portia called. "There is something else. This contract is not for blood. The words are, 'a pound of flesh.' If you spill one drop of blood by taking this flesh, the state of Venice will take all your land and all your money." In this way, Portia saved the life of Antonio, because it was impossible for Shylock to take the flesh without the blood. "I shall take the money then," Shylock said, disappointed. "There is no hurry," Portia said. "The Jew shall have nothing except his pound of flesh. Prepare yourself, Shylock. Do not cut off more or less than 1 pound, or, by the laws of Venice, you shall die." "Give me the money and let me go," Shylock shouted angrily. Shylock was going to take money from Bassanio when Portia stopped him again. "Slowly, Jew," she said. "By the laws of Venice, the state could take all your money because you have planned to kill one of its citizens. You must kneel before the Duke and beg his mercy." "To show you that we are different to you, I give you your life before you ask," the Duke said. "Now half your wealth will go to Antonio and half to the state." Portia then asked Antonio what mercy he could show. Antonio knew that Shylock's daughter had recently married a young Christian man. Shylock was so upset at the marriage that he had decided not to leave his money to the daughter when he died. "I shall give up my half of Shylock's wealth," Antonio said, "if he will sign a contract leaving the money to his daughter." Shylock agreed. Then, bitterly disappointed that he had not had his revenge on Antonio, he said that he must go home because he was sick. "Let me go home," he said, "and send the contract after me so that I can sign it." "Go then," the Duke said, "and make sure that you sign it. And if you're sorry for what you have done, the state will not take the other half of your money." The Duke now let Antonio go free. He thanked the lawyer for his wise words and invited him to his house for dinner. But Portia wanted to return to Belmont before her husband arrived. "I thank you, sir," Portia replied, "but I must leave immediately." The Duke was sorry that the lawyer could not stay. He turned to Antonio and said that he should be paying the lawyer well for saving his life. When the Duke had left, Bassanio offered the lawyer 3,000 ducats that were owed to Shylock. Portia refused to accept the money, but she asked for Bassanio's gloves instead. Then she looked at the ring she had given Bassanio when they were married. She decided to play a trick on her husband. "Give me your ring, also as payment," she said to Bassanio. "I cannot give you this ring," Bassanio said unhappily, "because it was a gift from my wife. I promised that I would never give it away. I shall find the most expensive ring in Venice and send it to you." "You speak to me as if I am a poor man," she replied angrily, leaving the court. "Dear Bassanio," Antonio said, "let him have the ring. Your wife will be angry, I know, but think of the great service he has done us both." Bassanio agreed and sent Gratiano after Portia with the ring. When he had given it to her, Nerissa asked for Gratiano's ring. Gratiano wanted to be as generous as his lord. He took off the ring that Nerissa had given to him at their marriage and gave it to the clerk. When they were alone, Nerissa and Portia laughed at the trick they had played. "Now we shall complain to them for losing their rings," Portia said. "And my lady," Nerissa replied, "we shall ask them why they have given their rings away to other women." When Portia arrived at Belmont with Nerissa, she felt happy because she knew she had acted well. The light shining from her house seemed to her like the light a good deed can spread in an evil world. Even the music she heard sounded sweeter in the quiet night than in the day. Now Portia and Nerissa entered the house, and they dressed themselves in their own clothes and waited for their husbands to return. When the men arrived soon afterwards, Antonio was with them. As Bassanio introduced Antonio to Portia, Nerissa and her husband began to argue in the corner of the room. "A quarrel already?" Portia asked. "What's wrong?" "Lady Portia," Gratiano replied, "it is about a cheap ring that Nerissa gave me when we were married. It had these words written on it: 'Love me and do not leave me.'" "What do these words mean now?" Nerissa cried. "You said that you would keep it always, and now you tell me that you have given it away to the lawyer's clerk? But I know you have given it to a woman in Venice." "I swear to you that I gave it to the clerk," Gratiano told her. "He was a boy not taller than you. His master saved Antonio's life, and he asked me for it. I could not refuse him." "You were wrong, Gratiano," Portia said, "to give away your wife's first gift. I gave my Lord Bassanio a ring, and I'm sure that he would never give it away." "But my Lord Bassanio gave his ring to the lawyer," Gratiano shouted. "Then the clerk asked for mine." When Portia heard this, she pretended to be very angry. "I think Nerissa was right," she said. "Some other woman has my ring too." "No, no, no, my lady," Bassanio cried. "No woman has it. The lawyer asked for it. He refused 3,000 ducats. What could I do, sweet Portia? Forgive me, dear lady. You would do the same." "Alas," Antonio said, "I am the cause of all these quarrels. I once promised my flesh for Bassanio. I would be dead now without the help of that wise lawyer. I know your husband will never break his promise to you again, my lady." Portia held out Bassanio's ring to Antonio and told to give it to her husband. Bassanio looked at it and was surprised to see that it was the one he had given away. "I was the lawyer," Portia explained, "and Nerissa was my clerk." Bassanio was a happy man because his wife was so wise. Portia then welcomed Antonio to the house and told him she had received good news. His ships were not lost at the sea and had arrived safely. All sorrow was now forgotten. A great feast was prepared, and the house was full of laughter. But how little those two men knew their own wives!